Welcome all to Paranormal, the New Normal. That's right, 2 days in a row. I know, you're so lucky, aren't you? You get to hear me twice in 1 week. And I think I got two things this Saturday too for you guys, so more for you. But anyway, you all know this voice. It's your host, Jeremy, here trying to make the world a little more normal once again. Is it going to happen tonight? Oh, fuck no, it's not going to happen tonight. I guarantee it. And I'm happy about that because who wants normal? Normal is boring. But to make sure tonight's not boring, I got an amazing guest for tonight. I am very proud to have on John Russell, a psychic for 50 plus years, author of 2 books I really want to read, actually, as I was looking at them today, and experiencer, over 1,000 times an experiencer, folks. This is going to be a conversation for the record book. So let's get it going because I'm ready to have fun. How you doing tonight, John?
Jeremy, I'm great. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Hope everybody enjoys it, and we're going to have a good time.
Oh, we are going to have a good time, but let me start by asking you the first question I ask pretty much everybody on the show.
Okay.
What got you into the paranormal?
Well, that happened when I was 5 years old, and I was asleep in my bed, sound asleep, and I woke up all of a sudden wide awake, no drowsiness, no grogginess, and I was like, well, what in the world is this? This is really strange. And I was laying there in the dark, and my parents had put a night light down the hallway so I could see to get up if I had to go to the bathroom or whatever. My bedroom door's open so I can look down the hallway, see the light from the night light. And I laid there a little bit, and I raised up on my elbows and just kind of looked around my bedroom like, what was this? Why am I so suddenly completely wide awake all of a sudden? And I looked down the hallway, and around the doorway in the hallway, there was this elderly black gentleman peering around the doorway at me. And I screamed bloody murder because I'm 5 years old. We're white. We didn't have anyone black living with us. So as a young child, my presumption is somebody's broken in. Somebody's broken into the house. And when I screamed, he walked around the door frame into the hallway, started walking toward the bedroom toward me, locking eyes with me. And I knew the old black ghost was elderly because he had close cropped white hair and he had a white mustache. And I can tell you what he had on. He had on a red flannel shirt, a plaid shirt, and he had on khaki pants, black belt, black shoes, and he was every bit as solid as you or I. He wasn't transparent, wasn't translucent. He was totally, completely solid, which reinforced my belief that someone in the flesh had broken into the house. So I screamed bloody murder again. My parents came running, and before they got there, he began to vanish. And he became transparent, translucent, transparent, and then just gone, just totally vanished. So my parents came in, were trying to console me, and they were telling me, oh, you just had a bad dream, you had a nightmare, you watched something on TV that, lodged in your subconscious and you had a bad dream about it or whatever. And I said, no. I said, there is someone in this house, even though I'd just seen him vanish. I said, there is someone in this house. And my fright was so real that my father went through the house. He looked in the closets. He looked under the beds. He checked all the doors and windows. Of course, everything was locked up tight and we hadn't been broken into. And it dawned on me that I had just seen my first ghost. And so my parents are like, we'll leave the light on for you and go back to sleep and everything's going to be all right and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, how can I go back to sleep after this? I said, here this guy comes solid as you or I and then vanishes into thin air. Why did he come in the first place? Is he going to come back? Is he going to want to talk to me? Is he going to scare me? Is he going to want me to do something weird or strange? And so it was like almost impossible to get back to sleep. And I finally did, very fitfully. And so I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks looking over my shoulder all the time. Is this guy going to come get me again? And having a really hard time going to sleep. And somewhere in that time frame, these paranormal experiences started occurring. And they occurred on the physical realm. And my parents saw them and other people witnessed them. So they were real things, not things that I imagined or hallucinated or meditated or dreamed or whatever. These were actual physical occurrences that began. And I couldn't have articulated it at that young of an age, but I realized that, oh, okay, this old black ghost came to open up the portal to these experiences. And then as time went on a little bit further, it was like I understood on an intuitive level that these experiences were going to be extremely important to me and were going to be extremely important to others in my life. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew it was going to be very important. And that's why he had come, to open up this portal and to awaken me to these experiences. And then subsequently, I realized that he had also awakened my psychic gift. I was close to 6, and I was out in the backyard playing with a toy, and this car pulled in the driveway, and I didn't know the people. I'd never seen them. So I ran the house, got my parents. It was on a weekend, and I ran the house, got my parents, and I said, there's somebody just pulling the driveway. I don't know who it is. I said, okay, we'll come look. So they came out and said, oh, these are friends of ours. And I'd never met the people. I didn't know them. So they got out, and they were standing on the sidewalk talking to my mom and dad before they went in the house, and just kind of chit chat, making small talk. And I was goofing around with my toy, and I looked over at the little cluster of adults there, and I walked up and just kind of insinuated myself into the middle of them. And I looked up at the people and I said, you folks have just been on vacation. And I said, you drove that car that's sitting in the driveway. And I said, you have 2 kids. You took 2 kids with you, but they're not with you today, but you have 2 children. And they began to look at me like I had snakes growing out of my head. And I said, you stayed at this hotel and it had this many stories, and there were trees out front that looked like this, and they were spaced at regular intervals. And the hotel was painted this color, and around back was the swimming pool area, and it was arranged like this, painted this color, looked like this. Well, this lady, she was like literally bug-eyed, and her mouth was agape. And she looked at my mom, looked at my dad, and she said, how the hell could he possibly know this? And my parents were kind of taken aback, and they said, oh, well, kids and their imaginations. And she says, no, imagination doesn't account for this. How the hell could he possibly know that? And my parents were kind of like, well, what do you mean? Well, she said, that's what we came to tell you today. We just went on vacation. We drove that car. We took our 2 kids. The hotel we stayed at is exactly like John described in every detail. How the hell could he know that? And they were like, John, go play. I was like, okay, nice to meet you folks. And off I went, and I scared them. I frightened them so badly that they never came back to visit my parents again. So that was when I realized that the psychic gift awakened. And at that stage of the game, I realized, okay, I can tell what people have been doing. I can read their emotions, their thoughts. I learned that I could predict their futures with great accuracy. And so from then on, it was just a matter of, okay, what can I do with this? How good can I get with this? How much service can I be with this? And that's what kicked it off.
Yeah, to be 6 and have that kind of ability. I mean, I've heard of it, but it's just, that's to be that detail oriented at that age is just insane. It's insane.
It is. It is. It was really an experience. And the thing about having it at that early an age, you don't know how to handle yourself, and you don't know how to handle life. And so it's just another complication growing up. When you have enough problems as it is, you hit the teenage years with your teenage angst and all this stuff. Now you got this psychic gift to boot, and people don't want to interact, with someone that has a psychic gift for the most part, because it scares them for whatever reasons. Either they've been taught that it's against their religion, or it's just something that spooks them when it occurs. And so you add that into an already difficult situation in life, and it compounded things. But at the same time, it was all I ever knew. And it was a normal operating mechanism for me. And I saw the potential it had to help people, not only to help myself, but to help others with it. So that at least made it tolerable from the social aspect growing up.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, who doesn't want that ability in high school? That way, what the girl you want to date is thinking.
Well, that's it. And that's the problem. You look at potential relationships, you can see the end from the beginning, and you go, oh, this is not going to work, So it's a time saver, and at the same time, kind of heartbreaking because you go, man, wouldn't it just be nice to just be able to connect with someone normally? And that wasn't a possibility ever.
Well, I mean, okay, some of the relationships I've been in the past, I wouldn't have mind seeing them in the beginning, what they were going to be, and being
I
able to
hear
walk
you.
away from it before that
Yep,
point.
before it
I
got to
feel
that point. I understand. I hear you. Yeah, it did serve me well a few times on that occasion.
I'd be a lot richer man if I could do that, Billy. But
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
so the second question I usually ask everybody in the show, I'm not even going to bother with you because it could take your answer could be 2-3 hours long at least. So I'm going to avoid that question for now. We'll jump into that in a bit. But so when did you start advertising your psychic abilities or using them to help others?
Well, I started around the age of 15 because I had started, I had a really good reading comprehension. My mother had got me to read early, and I had a knack for reading, and I had good reading comprehension. So by the time I was 11, I was reading everything I could get my hands on at an adult level. I was reading psychology and parapsychology and religions and on and on and on. Just studying everything I could to make sense out of everything that was happening. And then by the time that I was 15, I was doing readings for friends and family. And then by the time I turned 18, I began to read professionally. And that's been over 50 years ago now. And I've read professionally for over 50 years. I've read for clients in over 40 countries, which just blows my mind. It's just mind boggling to me. But that's when it all started. And around the age of 18, I already had a pretty good word of mouth clientele coming to me. I mean, there were people that would drive 100, 200 miles one way to come get a reading with me, which was very flattering. Was very honored by that. And so I thought, well, there seems to be a need for this, and there should be a wider outlet for this. So I began to advertise, periodically around that time, and then it just grew from there.
Jeez. So have you ever done any work for like the police or any detective?
I've had that's a question I get asked a lot, and there were 3 separate instances when I did some work. One time I was contacted directly by the FBI and asked to assist them on this case, and they called me and recorded it, and we had a long conversation. I gave them input on everything I saw, and it was very frustrating. All my encounters with trying to help law enforcement have been very frustrating. This in particular, the one particular agent wanted a personal reading with me after I gave him my input on the case, and I set up the reading for him. And I had I had told him that the case was in Texas, and I grew up in West Texas. And I told him, I said, there's a particular spur road. There are like 4 numbers on the roads. And I gave him, like, just for example, it was like 5497, let's say, that I saw at the time. So I gave him that road number and said, if you go down that road, there's going to be a break in the highway. You turn off into this kind of pasture area that's kind of, maybe it was a farm or something. Now it's kind of abandoned or deserted, and there's going to be some evidence there. So when he called me for his personal reading, I said, did you guys ever, I said, was there such a highway with the number that I gave you? And he said, oh yeah, there was with the exact number that you gave me. I was like, wow, okay, good. Did you go down that road and look for that turnoff? And he was like, no, we never explored it. And I was like, why not? So it's a very frustrating experience working with law enforcement. I haven't had much success with it. And interestingly enough, I think it was Storyhouse Productions that used to produce the TV show Psychic Detectives.
Yeah.
And they called me one time when I was living up in New York, and they asked me if I would be interested in doing the show, and if they could find someone that in law enforcement that was willing to work with me, would I be willing to do the show with them? That was shortly after I had shot the TV pilot for the History Channel. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in it. But I said, that's not my specialty. It's not my forte. And I said, I've seen your shows, and you have a lot of really good psychics that are really accurate and have really been helpful to the police. And I said, why don't you just keep using those? And she told me, she said, well, you would think it would work that way, but she said even with the really, really good ones, and the better they are, the more this seems to happen, that the law enforcement officials kind of feel like they're coming in and deflating their egos, kind of stepping on their turf. And instead of saying, oh, wow, here's an extra tool we can use to solve this crime, it's like, well, you're putting us in a bad light because we haven't been able to solve it. And here you come along and get these accurate bits of input that we can use to solve it. And it really hurt their egos. And she said it shouldn't be that way, but it is. And that's kind of why it's difficult to keep, people working with law enforcement. So it's pretty bizarre. It's pretty strange.
Sounds like it. And apparently Deborah likes what you're saying as well. And she's telling you to keep it up.
Keep it up.
I mean, working with police in any manner is always frustrating to some degree.
Yeah.
You got to stroke the egos. But
yeah.
So have you ever worked with animals? Because I'm just branching out to different psychics I've talked to before here, basically, and covering stuff I know that certain psychics can do and certain ones can't do. Just wonder.
I don't really focus on them. I can get things from animals and pick up things from animals pretty accurately. And like my little dog, we have a good communication, so on and so forth. But I don't really focus on that. That's not really my genre. I'll tell you an interesting story, though. One time my wife asked me that. She said, are you able to tune in on animals and do things? And we were talking about, the horse races. And she said, would you be able to tune in on which horse is feeling frisky that day and in really good health, and I'm going to win this race? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's go to the track and find out. So we went to the racetrack, and I tuned in on the horses. And the first time we were there, I picked 8 out of 12 winners. And the second time we were there, I picked 10 out of 12 winners. And so I could tune in to what was going to happen, which horse was going to win. But we didn't understand the betting system. And sometimes the second or third place horse, it was a pari-mutuel system, which we didn't understand. And sometimes the second or third place horse would win as much money or more than the first place horse. So it's like, well, how are we going to make any money off that on the horses? So, but it was interesting that I could, pick the winners with that much accuracy. But that kind of fizzled out when we couldn't understand the betting system. We said, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, you got to understand the odds, and
you got to understand all that. Yeah, and
do the math.
How can the third place horse win more than the first place horse? We couldn't get that.
So you've had a lot of experiences, and
a lot.
All right. Well, let's start with the one that I know everybody wants to hear about.
Okay.
I know you've had experiences with UFOs and possibly aliens.
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear about some of them.
Yeah, let me tell you the first time that I encountered a UFO. I was around 20 years old. And so I had been reading since I was 15 for friends and family, started reading professionally at 18. I had all these concrete paranormal experiences. Just, I draw paranormal experiences like flowers draw bees. And these are things, other people see them, other people experience them. We capture them on film, audio, video. And in spite of all that, I didn't believe in UFOs. I had seen the interviews on the TV shows. I'd read the magazines. I'd seen everything. And I was like, nope, not buying it, which is really strange with all these paranormal experiences I did. So one day I was, this is back in West Texas where I grew up. And West Texas has severely violent weather. And I've seen all kinds of strange weather phenomena there growing up. So one day I was at this building, and the parking lot for the building was across this narrow 2-lane street and an open parking lot. So when I exited the building, I could look across this narrow 2-lane street and I could see my car in the parking lot. It was real close. So I came out, and it was about 4 p.m, and it was overcast, and the clouds were low and dark. And the first thing that hits me in the face is this blast of wind when I open the door. And I look up and I see the clouds. I'm like, oh boy, here we are. We're in for it. So I better make a run for my car before it hits. So I close the door, and as I look at the parking lot, look at my car, there's this column, like just a round column of cloud attached to the clouds above, coming down into the parking lot, touching the asphalt, touching the parking lot, right by my car. And I'm looking at this thing. I've seen dust devils, I've seen tornadoes and all this. And I'm like, what in God's name is this? And it's very, very slowly swirling and rotating and this, that, and the other. And the cloud begins to exude these glowing orbs that come from out within the cloud, come right up to the surface and protrude just a little bit and then go back into it and vanish. And it does this all up and down the length of the cloud and all the way around the cloud. And the orbs are like, soccer ball size, basketball size. And they're glowing phosphorescent, red, orange, yellow, green, purple, really bright. And they come out and they go back in. They come out and they go back in, all up and down the cloud and all the way around it. And I'm looking at this, and Jeremy, as many experiences as I've had, honest to God, this is the first thing that went through my mind. I'm a young man. I thought I was healthy, but apparently I've had a stroke or some kind of nervous breakdown or some kind of problem. I've gone nuts. I'm hallucinating. And as soon as I can get control of myself and make it to my car, I'm going to go check myself in the hospital and say, hey, guys, you got to check me out. Something's happened with my brain. I really seriously thought that. And as I'm looking at this cloud, there's all kinds of debris in the parking lot, like paper cups and bits of paper and this, that, and the other. And down around the bottom of the cloud, which is rotating, swirling around, there's all this debris that should be moving and being blown around or sucked into the cloud. And it's perfectly still. It's not moving as the cloud is rotating and rolling, churning and boiling and all this. So that further convinces me that I'm nuts. And then I get this really, really strange urge. It's like, John, walk toward the cloud. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I take a few steps toward the cloud, and the cloud advances in the parking lot toward me. I stop and the cloud stops. I back up and it backs up. I move forward, it comes toward me. I stop, it stops. I back up and it backs up. I'm like, wow, okay, I really know I'm out of it now. So I'm standing up by the door of the building. The door opens, whacks me in the back. A buddy of mine comes out and he goes, oh man, I'm sorry. What are you doing standing so close to the door? And before I can even answer, he looks up the clouds and he goes, oh boy, looks like we're in for it. And then he looks across to the parking lot and he goes, what in the world is that? And my first thought, honest to God, is, oh, thank God I'm not nuts. I haven't snapped. I haven't had a stroke. He sees it too. It's real. Hallelujah. So I said, watch this, watch this. And I walk several steps towards the cloud and it advances toward me. I stop and it stops. I back up and it backs up. And I do that a few more times. And I look at him and I go, isn't that the weirdest thing you've ever seen? And he looks at me like I'm the weirdest thing he's ever seen. He goes, bye. And he runs. His car's parked the other way. He's out of there. This has scared him to death. He's like, I ain't hanging around for this. And I'm like, okay, great. Now what do I do? I'm stuck here with this thing. Can't get to my car. So about this time, it goes back up into the clouds above. And I'm like, okay, make a run for my car. Go get in my car. I'm like, what in the world was that? So I come out on the street and I'm driving to my house. And I have to tell you, the town that I lived in, I knew then, I still know like the back of my hand. You can't get me lost in it. I know every street in that town. So I know exactly where I'm at as I'm driving. And as I'm driving, it begins to rain. Now, it can really rain hard in West Texas. In 20 minutes, it can flood an underpass or flood your lawn in 20 minutes time. Yeah. So I've seen all kinds of incredible weather phenomena. I've seen all kinds of severe rain, hard rain. But this rain starts coming down, Jeremy, and I've got my wipers on high. They're not doing a bit of good. I've got my lights on in the car, and I cannot see but about a foot past the hood of my car. There are cars angle parked on the street. I can look out the passenger window of my car. I can't see them. That's how hard it's raining. And I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I'm like, I'm starting to panic because I'm like, okay, I literally cannot see more than a foot past the hood of my car. I'm going to run into somebody. If somebody's going to run into me, there's cars angle parked over here on the street. I can't see them. I'm going to sideswipe them. So I'm poking along super slow. And I know where I'm at. I've been counting the streets before this rain hits. So I basically know where I'm at. And we had a Sears Roebuck store there that was on Beauregard Street. And then behind on Twig Street was a rear entrance to the Sears, and they had a Sears automotive store out there in a big, huge parking lot. So my plan is like, okay, if I can make Tewig Street, figure out where I'm at, and I can poke down the street and get in that parking lot, I'm going to go in Sears. I'll get sopping wet. I don't care, but I'm going to go in Sears, go down to the basement where they have the best sporting goods store on the planet. I'll look at all the sporting goods till the storm passes, and I'll drive home when it's safe. So I'm poking along, and I see this little bitty, teeny tiny red pinprick of a light floating up here, up to my right. And I'm like, what is that? And it's the stoplight. Now, you know how big and bright a stoplight is. Well, this thing looked like a pinhead. That's how hard the rain's coming down. And I look at it like, oh my God, that's the stoplight. And about this time, I nearly rear end the car in front of me that stopped for the light. But my headlights pick up its bumper when I'm about a foot away from it. And I jam on my brakes, and then I look up, and there's headlights in my rearview mirror, and this car nearly hits me. I'm like, man, this is insane, but you can't stop. You're in the road. There's no way to see to park. You can't see any of the parking spaces. You can't see the cars that are angle parked. So there's no visibility at all. So the light changes, and we're creeping around the corner. We're going like a mile or two an hour, literally. I mean, that's all you can drive, and you can't see at that. And so we're going down the street, and I said, okay, if I can just watch for the opening in the Sears, if I can just see it, if I can just get in there, I can work out my plan. I can stop and wait. So we're going down the street, and I'm holding onto my wheel. I had bench seats in my car back then, and I'm holding onto the steering wheel, and I'm leaning over to the passenger window, trying to see where these cars are angle parked and trying to see where the entrance to Sears is. And you can't see a thing. I mean, you look out the passenger window, you've got maybe a foot or two that you can see outside the passenger window. That's how hard this rain's coming down. And I'm sitting there like that, leaned over, trying to look for the opening to the parking lot and trying to see the cars that are there. And as I'm leaned over like that, the rain instantly stops. And I don't mean it slacks off, and I don't mean like, oh, there's a little mist hitting the windshield. I mean, 1 minute. Think of this. Think of the hood of your car, and think of not being able to see beyond a foot of the hood of your car. And then 1 second later, full visibility is returned. The rain's gone, just vanished. Didn't stop, didn't slow down. It just vanished. It's gone. And I've got, it's still overcast, but I've got full visibility in my rearview mirror. I can see out the front all the way down the street for blocks and blocks and blocks, see everything on the side. I'm like, well, what in the world is this? That's the strangest thing I've ever seen. And as I'm sitting there, the cars that are in the other lane, the oncoming lane, are swerving over into our lane and almost hitting cars in our lane. And people are honking their horns, people are yelling, and people in the other lane are rolling down their windows and pointing up at the sky and jumping out of their car and pointing up at the sky. I'm like, what in God's name? Everybody's gone crazy. So I look where they're pointing, and right over the back of the Sears building, about maybe 20, 30 feet above the Sears building, is this big, shiny, metallic silver disc, this UFO, about 30 to 50 feet in diameter, just hovering there over the rear of the Sears building. No smoke, no flame, no lights, no fire, no nothing, just this silver metallic disc hovering there. And I literally did a cartoon eye rub. I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, I literally did a cartoon eye rub. And I look back, and it's still there. And I grab my door handle because I want to get out and get a better look like everybody else is. And as I grab my door handle, I see the UFO just barely perceptibly move towards us. And when it starts doing that, these low clouds rush from behind the UFO, cover it over. And right now, the rain's back in full force, just as it was before. And so this guy in front of me, he goes into the parking lot, and I'm on his bumper. And I said, okay, I don't care if I hit this guy. I don't care if I hit parked cars. I don't care what happens. My insurance will cover it. I still can't believe my eyes, and I'm going to talk to this guy. And so he parks in the parking lot. I park by him. He jumps out and runs out. I jump out of my car, and man, the rain is coming down so hard it hurts. I mean, it physically hurts. And I'm shielding my eyes, and I'm running into the store. Well, the Sears store had a vestibule. You go in, there was a vestibule there. The basement was down to the left, and then there was a set of double doors that went into the store proper. And in that vestibule, they have one of those large mats where you come in, wipe your feet and everything. So he was standing there on that mat, just staring down at the mat. and he wore glasses, and at the time I didn't, and his glasses were all beaded with water, and both of us looked like we just got out of the shower. I mean, we're both just water's just pouring off of us because we're so soaked. And I walked around in front of him and stood there for a little bit, and he's staring down at the floor. He doesn't even realize I'm there. And I said, "Excuse me," and he looks up at me, and I said, "Did you see what I just saw?" And he said, "Yeah, but I damn sure ain't going to tell nobody." And he sidesteps me and walks into the store. And you got to remember, this is back in the time that you just didn't talk about paranormal things.
Yeah.
You talk about UFOs. People think he's crazy. People think he's nuts. You could lose your job, so on and so forth. So that was my first experience. And then I had to change religions because obviously, damn, there they are. They're real. And since that time, I've had several more sightings, several more experiences. And the thing that got me about it was the cloud that preceded the UFO sighting. And now, was that precipitated by the UFO intelligences? There has been a lot of reports where either before, during, or after a UFO sighting, people experience some type of paranormal phenomena associated with it. So that may have gone hand in hand with it. The most mind-blowing to me, even more than that, really, was when I was living here in Florida all these many years later, and we had a courtyard in our house, and I would sit outside at night and look at the stars. I've always been an outdoorsman, always loved to just sit outside and look at the stars ever since I was a kid. And I was sitting outside looking at the stars, and here come this glowing orange object off to my right, moving through the sky. And we live near a small airport. And so we're used to seeing all these small planes, Cessnas and whatever were coming around in landing patterns. But, you know, a plane has blinking lights and it's got engine noise, and then it turns on its landing lights, which are super bright white lights to come into the airport. And I'm looking at this glowing orange orb, and it has no engine noise and it has no blinking lights. And as I look at it closer, it's translucent. And it's just this big orange orb floating through the sky. And it gets around in front of me, and it's down low. It's down real low. And I look at this thing, I said, "Holy crap, that's a UFO." And as it got in front of me, I stood up, and psychically and verbally, I said, "If you can hear me, stop and then reverse course." And this damn thing stopped. And then it reversed course slightly. And I was like, holy cow. And then from where it was, it shot up. You know, if you look up at the night sky and you see where the 727s are flying over about that height, it shot up to that height in like less than a second's time. No sound, no sonic boom, no nothing. Just zoop, there it is. And it hovered there a little bit, and then it literally, in less than a second's time, shot up into the stars. And just kind of, you could just see it wavering around there a little bit in the stars, and then it shot off into the universe and disappeared. And I was so gobsmacked I couldn't see straight. I was like, what in the world? And for all of these experiences, and I've tried to make further contact, I haven't been able to. And I've had a lot of people ask me, say, well, this thing obviously heard you. It responded. And then it was like just, boom, watch this, shoot off into the heavens. It was like, it's almost like, yeah, we heard you, but hey, what's this? Watch what we can do. And I said, yeah, that's kind of what I got out of it too. It's like, if it could communicate with me and hear me, why wouldn't it stick around? Why wouldn't it communicate further? And then I tried to open myself up to further communications. I had several more sightings after that and never got anything. So, I don't know. I believe they're extraterrestrial for the most part. Whose they are, what their intents and purposes is, I don't know. We have a lot of evidence that shows that they're uncaring at the least and nefarious at most. And I talked with here a while back. I was very privileged to talk with Kathleen Martin for a length of time. And she was Stanton Friedman's partner in UFO research and wrote several books together and this, that, and the other. And I respect her as probably one of the most knowledgeable and experienced UFO researchers there is. And I asked her, I said, Kathleen, you got any idea what's going on? She says, no. And if anybody's honest, none of us do. We really don't know what's happening and why. So those are the experiences I've had. And my theory is that someone in the government absolutely has to know what's going on what the motive is, who these entities are, who these beings are, why they're visiting us, why the cattle mutilations, why the abductions, so on and so forth. Someone in our government has to know. It's just ludicrous to think that they wouldn't, and why they keep this under such lock and key. That's more baffling than the aliens.
It is. The fact. Oh, okay. Well, the fact they admit that UFOs existed in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond. Obviously, we knew you knew. Now you're trying to cover your ass like 60 years after everybody already knew you knew what was going on.
Exactly.
And that's all you give us is, UFOs are real.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We knew that.
We knew that. We've known that forever and a day. It's like you're not telling us anything new. Now that you've owned up to that, own up to what you know about those UFOs,
I don't know. You think back to Eisenhower with the Almighty Thor.
Right.
Like, it's just, they have to know what's going on. And they do. They do know what's going on. And they probably may deal with them. The sneaky bastards, call them Illuminati, call them NWO, whatever the hell you want to call them. They exist.
Yeah.
Maybe those are just covers for what really exists. Who the hell knows? But they exist, and they damn sure know what these extraterrestrials are here for. They know what species they already know. They already know what species have been on Earth in the last 100 years. I honestly believe it's in the Vatican and it's in the President's Book of Secrets.
I think so. And I think, one of the things that I always tell people is that, one of the excuses that our government gave us for a long time was that we don't have the photographic capability to capture these things, because people are saying, why don't you get a clear picture of these things to show us? Oh, we don't have the technology. We don't have the capability. Well, I know that's BS, because a long time ago, it may be a couple of decades now, I saw a documentary on TV, and they were interviewing a former head of the CIA. And he said during the SR-71 Blackbird era, which was our premier spy plane, this thing flew so high, it flew in subspace, and it flew so fast, what was it, 2,000 or 3,000 miles an hour, that nothing could catch it. No rockets, no missiles, nothing, no guns, no bullets. And so he said during the Blackbird era, if you went out on a putting green on a golf course and put two golf balls a couple of feet apart, and the Blackbird flew over in subspace at speed and took a photograph, that when you developed the film, you could clearly read in the picture which golf ball was a Titleist and which one was a McGregor. Now think about that. That's in subspace going 2,000 to 3,000 miles an hour using film, taking a photograph, and you can get that clarity. And he said, that's decades old technology. Imagine what we can do now. Now, this is former head of the CIA saying this. And that was a long time ago. I saw this documentary. So, we have the capability. And to think that we have the capability to capture every landline phone, every cell phone call, every text message, every email, to think that we have the capability to vacuum up all of that and store it in the, where is it, in Wyoming or wherever it is, that big data collection center that was built during the Obama administration, I believe it was. To think that we have the capability to do all this, and that's verified, that's common knowledge. It's just ludicrous to me, with all the technology we have, the capability we have, that the government could sit there and go, no, we don't know what these things are. It's like, are you serious? You're really wanting me to buy that? I'm sorry, I just can't buy that,
No, I can't either. The government definitely knows more than they ever will let on about a lot of things. And
yes.
Extraterrestrials are definitely one of them, but kind of want to ask you about something too that the government knows about, but they won't admit either.
Sure.
Any experiences with our big hairy friend, Mr. Sasquatch?
Oh, Mr. Sasquatch. I haven't personally. I have a client who, for obvious reasons, I will keep confidential. I'll keep the location of everything confidential. But I have a client that hikes into a wilderness area with several other people. They've been doing this for years. And they interact with the Bigfoots. And there are families with young ones of the Bigfoots. And in this area, the Bigfoots will come down to the lake to sit and to drink water and just to gaze at the lake. And the Bigfoots will make things out of branches and this, that, and the other as gifts and bring them to the people and leave them for them. And they have this interaction with them. And I have a standing invitation to go there. Now, I'll be 70 next year, and my life and my health has not been good to me since I was a kid. So hiking is way, way gone out of the picture for me now. But if I had the capability, I have the standing invitation to go there with them and to experience that. And I would give my eye teeth to do that. If I win the lottery, I'm going to get a couple of big, strong guys just to cart me around and say, okay, you're going to carry me up in the wilderness and I'm going to have this experience. But it's, I firmly believe that they are real. And I go back to the Native American descriptions of their interaction with them, that there seems to be a paranormal component associated with them, and this apparent ability to be there and to vanish, or to appear out of thin air, but to interact with the physical realm. And a lot of people have reported telepathic communications with them, so on and so forth. So I'm firmly convinced they exist. I'm firmly convinced they're real. And I'm sure our government has to know a great deal about them as well.
Oh, they have to, because of I truly believe they have to, because especially the Olympic project, because they literally have land that no one's allowed to go into without permit.
Oh, and, yeah.
I mean, Small Town Monsters got permit, and they went there and filmed, and
right.
And there are nests there. There are Bigfoot nests.
Yes.
So
yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, just the amount of, and this is the same thing I say about another topic I'm going to get into in a minute, but there are so many sightings of Bigfoot across the world, not even the United States, but we'll focus on the United States for now. But across the United States, there are so many sightings of Bigfoot that even if 90% of them are made up stories, that's still a shitload of sightings.
That's a lot of sightings. A lot of sightings. I just had, hang on just a second. I got to sneeze here.
Oh, good.
Sorry, it's allergy season. I just went to, we live in Florida, and of course the infamous skunk ape in Florida, which is Bigfoot. And I just did a lecture and a book signing at a large library here in Florida. And the person that invited me, that oversaw everything there, was telling me about her encounter with a Bigfoot. And I didn't get to discuss that in as much detail as I wanted to with her, because then we had to start the presentation, and then afterwards we were busy wrapping everything up, and people were coming up to get books signed, so on and so forth. But yeah, there are a lot of regular sightings. They're all over. And again, there seems to be this paranormal component to it. And I think that, there's a lot of stories. There's some stories that people have these good experiences, or there are other experiences they're threatened, or rocks are thrown at them by the Bigfoots or whatever. And I think a lot of it may depend on your attitude, as it does with all things when you do paranormal investigations. If you go in with a disrespectful attitude or a frivolous attitude, or you're going in with the idea, hey, this is my turf, I own this, I'll do what I want to, then you get kind of handed a lesson, by the other side. Yeah. And I think that may be part of the situation there. It's like I tell people going in paranormal investigations, don't go in disrespectful, don't go in challenging the spirits, don't go in cursing and yelling, trying to provoke a response. I hate the ghost hunter shows that do that. And then when a response occurs, they scream and run like little girls. It's like, dude, that's what you're there for, and why do you scream and run? But it's disrespectful. You have to understand, in all communications with the other side, regardless of what it is, you're dealing with sentient, emotional beings. So
exactly.
Yeah, if you go in and give them respect, give them their due, give them their honor, 99.9% of the time they're going to do the same with you.
I mean, and I usually go back to the Native Americans too when it comes to Bigfoot. I mean, but that's also, or going back that far though, there also is good and bad, which leads me to believe there's different subspecies of Bigfoot, the same as there is humans.
Right.
And
right.
I mean, because you got the cannibal Bigfoots that come down and take people from villages and eat them in the Native American times.
Right.
And you got the other ones that are just hairy men that they trade with. Like, it's
exactly. Yeah.
It's always going to be good and evil of everything in the world. That's
Yeah.
just the way it has
And
to
we
be.
have this mind-boggling, like you're saying, we have this mind-boggling variety of species and experiences and everything. And I think the one thing I think that saves us here is that overarchingly, I think the good experiences that we have with the other side, I know that's been the case for me, outweighs any of the negative experiences. And I think there's ways to keep yourself from having a dangerous or a negative experience, in any of these regards.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, basically. I mean, I haven't had too many myself that were, I mean, I haven't had that many myself to begin with, but personally, I feel like on the whole scope of it, I definitely hear more positive than negative ones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of all the experiences I've had way, way, way over 1,000 paranormal experiences on the physical realm. And all of those have been uplifting, have been positive. In some cases have literally been life-saving. I mean, I've literally had my guardian angel save my life on more than one occasion. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I've heard a lot of stories of angels in this podcast, and I mean, as an agnostic person, it makes me like question things more and more. But then again, the name angel is just a name given by people. So is it really is angels, or is it just spirits overall that are? It's just
there you go.
That
there you go. And I think that these spirits, what we call a guardian angel, I think that we do get these intelligent beings that are either assigned to us through some process or volunteer to watch over us through some process. And I know some of the spirits that I've had with me in my life have been with me since I was a young kid. And as I've aged, as I've gone up, they've been there with me all the way through. There's been other spirits that have come into my life and then gone. And that's a process that continues. But for the most part, there seems to be this retinue around me that's always been there. And they've watched over me. They've protected me. They've guided me. And so, we're familiar with the appellation guardian angel. So I use that. And like you say, I think that may be simplistic, but it's the nomenclature. So it serves us when we're trying to make a point or communicate with someone. But I've had physical experiences with my guardian angels where they've saved me from harm and literally saved my life.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Look at the clock here just to make sure. But tell us what's your favorite experience with it? I guess is the best way to phrase it. What's your favorite
guardian angels?
Yeah. What's your favorite experience with the guardian angel?
My very favorite one. Well, actually, gosh, there's so many that it's like picking your favorite kid. There's been several times they've saved my life, but one time they saved my life. I've been a biker since I was about 15. And on my current motorcycle, I have almost 114,000 miles. So a lot of riding, a lot of serious riding ever since I was a kid. And I love biking. And I was out, this is when we're living here in Florida. We had moved here and I had scheduled myself a day off. And I was riding down one of the Florida interstates here. And if you know anything about Florida, there's 3 lanes on the interstate. Now, the right lane, the speed limit's 70. The right lane, that's where the slow traffic's supposed to be. Well, that's where the people going 80 are. In the middle lane, people are going 90 to 95. And in the left lane, all bets are off. People over there imagine they're training for the Daytona 500. So I'm in the right lane, and it's a beautiful, bright, sunny day, very little wind, which was unusual for Florida, where I was at. And I'm on the interstate, and I'm just geezering along, enjoying the day. I'm going about 70, and little old ladies on tricycles are passing me. And it's like, I don't care. I'm having a good time. It's a pastoral scene out in the countryside, and the day's beautiful, and I've got the whole day off, and I've just started the ride, and I'm really enjoying this. And the guys tell me, this voice in my head audibly says, move into the left lane. Now, this all takes place in like a split second. It takes me a lot longer to tell you about this than it actually happened.
I'm
But the
sure.
voice was moving to the left lane. And I'm arguing with my guys. Now, they've guided me since I was a kid, and I'm arguing with them. And I'm like, guys, you know, I have a really good high speed riding capability. I mean, high speed. Okay, we're talking about breaking the law. But I tell the guys, I said, guys, I don't want to get in the left lane. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm rolling along slow. I'm looking at the countryside. It's going to take a lot to get through the traffic and get over in the left lane because it's really thick and everybody's going really fast and crazy. And I can do it, but I don't want to. And they speak to me again. The voice is audible in my head. And this time they say, John. They call me by name. John, move into the left lane now. I'm like, oh, whatever. So I downshift, upshift, throttle on, throttle off, brake on, brake off, bob, lean, weave. I get my heavy beast over into the left lane, and people are like, these damn bikers and all this stuff. And so I get over there, and I'm riding faster than I want to be. It's way below my high speed capability, but I just didn't want to be going that fast. I want to just be goofing off. I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
what? Why in the world? And about that time, and again, all this takes place in like a split second. And all of a sudden, in the right lane where I was, I don't know if this guy hit somebody, somebody hit him, but this car spins around in the right lane and faces the wrong way on the interstate. As the guy's spinning around, I look over and we actually lock eyes. We actually look into each other's eyes as his car is spinning around. And detritus is blowing across the lanes from the wreck. Like, here comes a hubcap rolling, and here's pieces of glass flying, and here's metal flying, and I'm bobbing and weaving through that to avoid all of that. And I look back to see if I should stop, but people are already stopping and pulling over, so I know they're going to render aid and they're going to call the highway patrol and everything.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, holy cow. So if I hadn't heard and listened and obeyed to my guardian angel's voice and gotten over, I would have ran right into that guy. And then no telling how many people would have hit me before they got stopped. And I wouldn't be here to tell you this story. So
Yeah.
that's one of my favorites out of that.
Yeah, well, when you hear the guys telling you stuff, you gotta listen. I mean,
You gotta listen.
The fact that you're arguing with them was pretty
Exactly.
funny.
I tell people, I say, how can I get my guardian angel guidance? I said, well, first off, you have to make time to get quiet and listen and ask for it. And getting quiet means no computer, no cell phone, no radio, no downloading, no streaming, no TV, nothing. Quiet, silence, and listen and ask for that guidance. And then when it comes and you get it, you got to obey it. You got to listen to it. You got to do what they tell you.
Yeah, trying to get that silence nowadays is kind of impossible.
It's hard. It's very difficult. A lot of distractions. People are wired all the time, and something's going on all the time. And you have to learn how to get away from that and get back into the silence to the point that you can listen.
Exactly. I mean, it's scary. But all right, well, we're getting close to the end here, but I can't end the show unless I ask you, because you're from Texas, so
Yeah.
have you possibly, and I'm crossing my toes and fingers here hoping, have you had any experiences with Dogmen?
Oh man. I may have. When I was a kid, I had a paper route. Now, people nowadays don't understand what a paper route is because a guy comes by, an adult comes by in a car and tosses out a paper at the end of your driveway. And that's how you get a physical newspaper now. Back in my day, when I was a kid growing up, you had a paper route and it was all done by kids. And you got up at 3 or 4 in the morning. The newspaper dropped a stack of papers on your sidewalk, equivalent to your subscribers. You went out at 3 or 4 in the morning, drug that in, rolled them up by hand, rubber banded them, stuffed them in a bag, went out on your bicycle in the dark, and threw your paper out through your customers. And I had a morning route and an afternoon route, but this was a time I had a morning route. And I was like in elementary school when I was doing this. So I was a kid. And I set out on my morning paper route, and we had street lights in the area, but it was still pitch black. And I knew all of my customers because back then, the way you collected money from your subscribers, the newspaper didn't do it. They sent you out a subscription book with little receipts on it, and you would go and knock on every subscriber's door on your route. And I had like 110, 120, 30 subscribers. You would go knock on their door. They would bring you cash or a check and pay for the paper. You'd write out a little receipt, tear it off, and give it to them. You did that for every subscriber. So I knew not only the neighborhood, I knew all my subscribers throughout that entire neighborhood. And nobody had large dogs at the time. Very few people had dogs at all. Nobody had big, large dogs at all. So that plays into the story. So as I wrap my papers that morning, I head out in the dark on my bicycle. The first thing that I notice is the energy, the atmosphere, the air feels weird or thick. It's almost like I'm pedaling through water. It's like this strange feeling. And I'm like, what in the world is this? So as I'm pedaling down, make a turn to go up and start throwing my route, I hear this ungodly loud howling, and it's not a dog. And again, no one in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood's large. The neighborhood extends for miles on my paper route. Nobody has a dog. And here comes this loud howling, but this howling is not a dog howling. This is some ungodly, weird, spine-chilling, hair-raising howl. And I'm like, what in God's name is that? So I turn onto the street to start my route, and I notice that all the street lights are out but one, which is weird. I mean, all the street lights. You say, okay, one or two goes out, but all the street lights are out. I said, okay, so I've got this weird, thick atmosphere I'm riding through that almost feels like I'm struggling to pedal through the air. This weird howling, and then the street lights are out. So I go up to the corner and where my house is, where my block is, turn that corner to throw the papers there. And the kids that were my age, there was a brother and a sister that lived up on the corner opposite us at the end of the block. And they were out. They had spent the night outside on blankets in the front yard. We did that a lot when we were kids. And they were flagging me down and yelling at me, John, come here. And I went over and they said, have you been hearing this howling? And I said, yeah, I just heard it when I started my paper route. What's going on here? They said, we've been hearing it all morning. And so we were sitting there discussing what it could be. And the howling would be like, you would hear it like a block away. And then instantaneously it was 3 blocks away on the next street over. And then all of a sudden it was over here right in front of you. And then all of a sudden it was behind you. All of a sudden it was on the block over, and it kept doing that. So we were freaking out. And all of a sudden we had alleys running behind our houses. And all of a sudden at the mouth of the alley, right down the street from their house, there's this hideous loud howling. And they were like, oh my God, there it is. What are we going to do? I said, well, let's run in your house. Let's go inside and get away from this thing. And for whatever reason we didn't, we stood there, kept talking. And this idiot friend of mine reaches down to the street, grabs a rock and throws it at the alley and says, get out of here, you son of a bitch. And I'm like, oh my God, you're going to get us killed, whatever this thing is. And nothing happens and things get quiet. So we're sitting there talking. And I said, well, man, I've got to throw my paper out. I've got to service my customers. I got to go throw my paper out. And so, are you really going to go? And I said, well, I've got to throw my paper out. So I'd tell him goodbye and I'd pedal off on my bike. And this idiot friends of mine, as I'm leaving, he goes, whatever it is, I hope it gets you. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, God. So this is playing in my mind now. So as I'm pedaling, no street lights, and here this howling is, and it's a block behind me. And I look behind, I can't see anything. And then all of a sudden, it's a couple of blocks in front of me. And then all of a sudden, the howling's coming from the next street over. And it's like, what in God's name is going on? So I'm out there like a little idiot in the dark, throwing my route. I don't know if I'm brave, stupid, or what, but I feel this obligation to my customers. So I throw this route, and the very end of this, you're going to love it. This is so classic. The very end of the paper route, I have to go out past our cemetery there in town, the back of the cemetery, on this dirt road way back out there where my last customer is in this apartment, a garage apartment up over this house. And by the time I get there, I am literally whistling when I go past the cemetery. I'm like, and I'm looking over at the cemetery and I'm like, something's going to come out of there and get me and drag me off. My parents are never going to know what happened to me. That's this thing that's been following me. And so I make it past the cemetery. I'm still hearing the howling. And I throw the last customer and I'm like, okay, now if I can run this gauntlet and make it home, I'll survive. I'll be safe. And the howling stopped. Never heard it again. Made it home okay. And the next day I got up to throw the paper out. The atmosphere was normal. All the street lights were back on. Never heard anything again. So I don't know if it was a Sasquatch. I don't know if it was a Dogman. I don't know if it was some kind of weird, strange ghost or spirit or whatever it was. But my first thought, as I thought about it over the years, was Dogman. But whatever it was, I didn't suffer any harm. And it was just one of the wilder experiences I've had.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
It almost sounds to me like it would be a pack of dogmen, like, and that's why it seemed like it was everywhere. Because if it was like a pack or something, it would be house from all over the place. But it's strange. It only happened once, and like it wasn't a regular occurrence in your neighborhood.
Yeah, never heard it again, and never experienced anything like that again. Now, I've experienced a lot of other weird stuff, but never experienced that again. Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's weird because usually you hear of like dogmen being territorial, unlike Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Most of the time, because Bigfoot's travel, from what we know. But
exactly. It's
strange.
It is very strange. Ooh. Very, very strange.
Gave me the damn chills. So before we wrap it up here, though, because and I'm definitely gonna have to get you back on again because there's so many. I'm sure there's so many more stories I haven't heard.
Oh, we haven't scratched the surface. I'll tell you, we haven't scratched the surface.
I might have to do a freaking 2-hour special or something. I swear.
Yeah.
But before we go, tell my audience about your books, what they're about.
Sure. Well, my first book I wrote, and all these are available. They're online at any major bookseller. You can get them at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, independent shops on the web. If you want more information about those, you can go to my website, which is johnrussellauthor.com, and it's got information on all the books. The first book I wrote, Writing with Ghost Angels and the Spirits of the Dead, that centers on the paranormal experiences I had while I was on my motorcycle rides here in Florida and Georgia. So very interesting book, lots of lessons learned there, lots of entertainment, lots of good stories. The second book, A Knock in the Attic, I wrote because people were always like, well, what was it like to grow up psychic? What were your experiences? So that goes back to my childhood when I had the old black ghost experience, comes up from there through my childhood, telling more about the experiences I had, what I felt about those, what I learned about those, into young adulthood, into adulthood, and on up through my life, up until my move to New York, my move to Florida, shooting a TV pilot for the History Channel, meeting Uri Geller in person, all these really neat, incredible things. Excuse me. And the third book then, which has just come out in July of this year, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. That's each chapter has a specific tool or technique that you can use to enhance your psychic abilities. And you don't have to know anything. You don't have to feel like you have any special gift. There's no complicated language. I take everything, make it super simple, and I guide you by the hand step by step. For example, the first chapter is how to use psychometry, how to learn and use psychometry. I define it, tell you what it is, tell you exactly step by step how to learn it, how to practice it, get good at it, the real world application of it. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback on that book. People are like, this is like a textbook. It's like I can go into this thing, learn all these things. And even after I've done a chapter, I come back to it and reread it and learn more and absorb more and absorb more. So the first two are kind of like storyteller books. This is like the textbook, but it has a lot of paranormal experiences as well, but a lot of practical information, how to do dream interpretation, how to do an old-fashioned seance, how to do candle magic, a whole bunch more. And then for those that might want a reading, johnrussell.net. the author page, johnrussellauthor.com, the psychic page, johnrussell.net. And on the author page, when you go there, you're going to see a link for each book, and each book has its own page. It'll show you the awards it's won, the endorsements it's gotten. My books are endorsed by Uri Geller, George Noory of Coast to Coast AM, Phyllis Galdi, publisher of Fate Magazine, Mike Ricksecker, a lot of other people. It's got the editorial and reader reviews there, and then links where you can buy it. So that's available for each book. And then I've got another book finished that'll come out early in 2024. And it's back to the storyteller mode, more true paranormal experiences that I've had. And then I'm writing on a 5th book now, which will come out either late in 2024 or early 2025. And more stuff planned, more stuff going. So still active and a lot going on. People are really going to enjoy the books.
They sound amazing. I definitely am going to be checking out some of them. Yeah. And if it's coming out in early 2024, it works perfectly because I'm booking in January. So we can get you back on definitely.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. You told some great experiences, and I cannot wait to hear more of them. My God.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Like I say, we haven't even scratched the surface. I've had so many, it's unreal. And a lot of these stories are in the books, and people are going to be entertained by them. They're going to learn from them because I've learned things, passed it on to the readers, give you a lot of food for thought. So they're very entertaining. People are going to enjoy the books.
Oh, I'm sure. But folks, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
Yeah,
like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, please. You made me #1 in science podcast. Keep it going. That's all I got. That's all I keep harping on it, but hey, keep me there, please. I like being #1. It's nice. It's a nice change of pace. We'll get some sponsors hopefully soon. Sorry. But you know where you can find me to all my listeners. If you don't know at this point, shame. 1, 2, shame. And 3, listen to the outro. I'll tell you everywhere I am, where you can find me, where you can find everything I do, and just check it out. And of course, thank you to the Blind Knowledge Network and Parapost Network for letting me stream on their services and let me entertain them. Until next time, I'm your host as always, and trust me, John will be back. Tell us more stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.